we've had a lot of chaos over the last couple of years in the United States of America, like chaos in communities, like riots and things. Like, what is that about? Well, I believe it's about a bunch of children in adult bodies.
Here we go. You see, I got where I am because someone reached out a hand. Help me to stand, be an independent man.
Because I'm standing on the shoulders of a giant.
The shoulders of a giant, y'all.
I'm thankful.
Hello, YouTube. Myron Golden here again. Today I'm going to talk to you about the concept free speech is dead. By the way, it's not dead yet, but it's on its way to being dead. And when free speech dies, like freedom dies. Like your ability to be free will die. First it's free speech. Actually, first it's free thought, then it's free speech, and then it's freedom, right? So I'm going to read a couple of things to you. I'm going to read a passage of scripture that's really, I think will really help us wrap our minds around this concept, and I'm going to read the First Amendment. So Larry, go ahead and pull the whiteboard up. So y'all can see I have on my digital whiteboard here, it says, free speech is dead. This is the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, that is the First Amendment of the Constitution, okay? Now, by the way, let me say this. There are a lot of people who don't love America. I love America. I'm not delusional. I don't think America is perfect. I've never been to a perfect place in my life. And I know America's not perfect, and I know America has got some very, very bad stains on its historical past and some very bad stains on its historical present. I get that. I get all of that. But it's still the most free nation in the world. And that has not always been true. That has not always been true for everybody in America, right? So I'm going to start there. I'm going to say more about that too. Okay, so I'm going to read to you two verses from the book of Ephesians, chapter 4. I think it's verse 14 and 15. It says that we henceforth be no more children. So that's really important to think about. That we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and the cunning craftiness whereby they lie in wait to deceive. But speaking the truth in love, may grow up into all things, which is the head, even Christ. Now, what does all that mean? Well, it means the reason I wanted to read that to you is we've had a lot of chaos over the last couple of years in the United States of America, like chaos in communities, like riots and things. Like, what is that about? Well, I believe it's about a bunch of children in adult bodies. And the difference between a child and an adult is not the age. A difference between a child and a real adult is responsibility, right? A child is not responsible. They're not responsible to pay for the place they live. They're not responsible to pay for their food. They're not responsible to take care of themselves. An adult is supposed to do that. So if you think about the word responsibility, it means to respond with ability. So if you lack responsibility, and you don't have the ability to respond with ability, the only thing you can do is react. Reactions are what children do. Responses are what adults do. And we live in a country, in a world where people grow up in their body and in their mind they stay a child. And the reason they stay a child is because somebody who was supposed to parent them failed. I believe that every number has significance. 1 is the number of unity, 2 is the number of separation, 3 is the number of God, 4 is the number of the earth. There are 4 directions on the earth: north, south, east, and west. There are 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. Oftentimes when principles show up in the earth, they show up in 4s. Some of you have heard me teach before on the 4 levels of value. There are also 4 levels of teaching for 4 levels of learning. But there are also 4 levels of parenting for 4 levels of child development. What does this have to do with free speech? I'm about to show you. Because now we've got people who are college aged who, if somebody's talking about something they don't like, they proclaim the space as unsafe because you made me feel threatened, which doesn't make any sense. Nobody can make you feel threatened. People can threaten you or not threaten you. Make me feel threatened does not have a definition. That doesn't mean anything. That's psychobabble for we want somebody to have special privileges, okay? So one of the things we have to understand is, as an aside, even before I go back to the 4 levels of parenting for 4 levels of child development, let us understand that truth does not require that error remain silent in order for it to exist in the same space. Did I say that too fast? Okay, I'm gonna say it again slower. Truth does not require that error remain silent in order for them both to exist in the same space. However, error requires truth to be silent in order for them to stay in the same space. And that's what has created this ridiculousness known as cancel culture. That is what has created this ridiculousness known as political correctness. That is what has created this ridiculousness, which is known as, quote, safe spaces. Do you understand, if I hate the word bridge, if I don't like, just don't use the word bridge around me, it triggers me. And I'm driving down the road, and somebody's standing there with a megaphone and a sign that says, the bridge is out, the bridge is out. You made me feel unsafe. You said the bridge is out. I don't like that word bridge. And are they more unsafe if they stop and hear the word that they hate? Or are they more unsafe if they keep on driving and the bridge is out? Like, in order for error to be fruitful and to multiply and to be popular, truth has to be silent. And that is why there is such a concerted effort in the minds of the people who, I might add, already know they're wrong, to silence the voices that oppose them. Because here's the reality. Watch this. If I really believe something, by the way, this should be true about you too. If I really believe something, I can believe it all by myself. There's not a multitude of people on planet Earth who can convince me that my name is Charlton Heston. Why? Because I already know the truth. My name is Myron Golden. There's no group of people, it doesn't matter how loudly they say it, doesn't matter how many people are saying it, I know I'm Myron Golden. So when I know the truth, an error does not affect me. It's like water off a duck's back. But oh, if I'm a lie. If I am really Myron Golden, I've been telling people I'm Charlton Heston. Now, if people are going to point out that I'm not really Charlton Heston and I'm Myron Golden, now I have to silence that voice, because that voice is dangerous to me because I am a liar. Are y'all tracking my logic? That's going to make more sense here in a minute. I talked about some of the stains on the garment of America's history. Chattel slavery is one of those stains. It's not the only one, but it's one of those stains, and it's a very dark stain. It's a very ugly stain. It's a very wretched stain on the garment of the United States of America. Racism in America is still alive, number one. Okay, so don't pretend it's not still alive. I mean, it's still alive. But I've got good news for all the black people here, all the people who are not white. I got good news for you. Racism doesn't have to affect your life. It doesn't have to affect your life. Like, you don't have to be negatively impacted by racism. So I was talking to somebody recently, I don't even remember who it was. It was a woman, and she was a minority, and I don't remember who it was, but she says, yeah, I went to go get this job, and they wouldn't hire me, so I bought the company. I hope she fired those clowns that wouldn't hire her. I love it, right? She built a successful business, went and bought the company. Now, one of the things that allowed slavery, Jim Crowism, right, which is the slavery after slavery, right, and segregation and real inequality, not the stuff they talk about now as inequality, the real inequality, real discrimination, not the stuff they call discrimination now. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But one of the things that caused it to last for hundreds of years in a nation that proclaimed from the rooftops that it was for freedom. One of the things that made it that all of those evils last so long in the United States of America is because it was either illegal or taboo to speak out against it. I mean, think about that. It was taboo to speak out against slavery. It was against the law to speak out against slavery. It was taboo to speak out against Jim Crow law. May have been, in some states, it was even against the law to speak out against Jim Crow law. Not only would they kill the black person who they didn't like for whatever reason, they would kill you if you were a white person, if you tried to stand up for a black person. I'm just telling you, this is history, y'all. I'm not making anything up. And I already told you, I love America. Hey, I was born in a segregated hospital in Tampa, Florida, May 14th, 1961. I walk with a brace on my leg. I've walked with a brace on my leg every day since I've been walking. Don't tell me I don't understand racism. I understand it more than most. But guess what? It couldn't stop me, and it shouldn't stop you. Are y'all tracking? Y'all tracking? Couldn't stop me, shouldn't stop you. There are many, many people, and I'm not talking about me right now. I'm just talking, there are many, many thousands of people from our ancestors who had it way worse than us, whose lives turned out way better than ours, because they weren't they weren't emphasizing the problem, they were figuring out a solution. And I believe that's what we all need to do. That's what black folks need to do, that's what white folks need to do. And by the way, let me just say this as an aside. Like, if you're white, stop telling black people to get over it. Nobody would say to the Jews to get over the Holocaust. And the atrocities that were done to people in America, the black people in America, were just as bad, and some of them were worse than the atrocities that Hitler did to the Jews. I'm just keeping it real. I am not like speaking out against America. I'm talking about what actually happened, right? Okay, so y'all are tracking. Now, here's the problem. We have a whole generation of people that have been trained under the lie of political correctness, under the darkness, under the blindfold of safe spaces. We've created a nation of fragility and people who are fragile, and they crack when somebody looks at them funny. They've never had to stand for anything. They've never had to build anything. They've never had to oppose anything in their lives. And so if somebody disagrees with them in a college classroom, they start screaming. Like their whole routine is to start screaming like a 3-year-old. It's so, you've seen this infantile behavior. You've seen it. We've all seen it, right? It's atrocious. Why? Because nobody ever taught them how to be an adult. And because errors need to silence truth. Truth does not need to silence error. All truth has to do for error to go away is show up. But error has to silence the truth. Well, I started talking about this, I'm going to finish it. So 4 levels of parenting for 4 levels of child development. From age newborn to 4 years old, the parenting style that you should use is training. What's the purpose of training? Training is to train a child to respond appropriately to authority. What does that mean? Well, the appropriate response of a child to an authority is immediate and complete obedience, right? If they're an authority. Now, every adult is not your authority. Your parents are your authority, and anybody that your parents give authority to, they are your authority within the bounds of right. Are y'all tracking with me? Right? So, like, a person doesn't have a right to command you to do something wrong, an authority, right? Because then you have a right to say, respectfully decline. Are y'all tracking? Okay, so training is for the purpose of teaching children to respond appropriately to authority. What's the next phase? 5, 6, 7, and 8, that's the next 4 years. That's teaching. This is the hardest part of parenting. Like, in case you didn't, no, teenagers are hard. Yeah, teenagers are hard. Teenager years are hard because you didn't do the other ones, right? Teenage years should be the easiest, okay? So 5, 6, 7, and 8, what are they? That's teaching. What is that? Now you're teaching them the reasons behind the rules that you gave them when they were 1, 2, 3, and 4. Are y'all tracking? You're teaching them the reasons. What is the purpose of teaching? The purpose of teaching is to get children to start to reason properly with truth. So we want them to respond properly to authority, then we want them to reason properly with truth. Y'all tracking? Okay, what's the next phase? The next phase is where life begins to get really, really good as a parent. This is the transitioning stage. What is that? That's age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 9, 10, 11, 12 transition. What's that? That is where you give your children the ability to make adult decisions for your entire family under your supervision. Beside you, not instead of you, but beside you. Okay, tonight, John, you get to decide. Little Johnny, you get to decide where we go eat. You get to decide how much of a tip we're going to leave the server. And this is how we teach our children how to interact responsibly as adults So now they can go out to eat with us, and they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. They understand the concept of a tip. They understand the concept of paying for what they get. They understand how to interact with adults. Why? Because this is what you've been preparing them for. The purpose of parenting is not to protect and provide for a child until they turn 18 and then kick them out of your house. The purpose of parenting is to take an irresponsible, out-of-controlled child and turn them into a responsible, in-control adult. That's the purpose of parenting, right? So, fast forward, what's the last stage? The last stage is trusting. 13, for the rest of their life, now you can trust them as an adult. This is why in the Hebrew culture, when a boy turns 13, he gets bar mitzvahed. When a girl turns 13, they get beit mitzvahed. 12, 13, they get bar mitzvahed. What does bar mitzvah mean? It means son of the law. You are now responsible to God for yourself, right? You are now an adult. Okay, now, that was an aside, but I think it was a good aside, right? The problem we have now, we have a bunch of 20-somethings and 30-somethings and some 40-somethings who've never been trained, so they don't know how to respond properly to authority. And by the way, all of us have an authority over it. There's nobody that's not under authority, whether they like it or not, okay? Go read Romans chapter 13, okay. They don't know how to reason properly with truth, so anything that sounds good in their minds is good. And then they don't know how, I didn't tell you the purpose of transitioning. The purpose of transitioning is to, teaching, training, transitioning is to get them to be responsible beside you so then they can eventually be responsible without you. Okay, so we went through all of that. Now here's the problem we have in America. We have the problem in America that there are so many undisciplined, out-of-control children in adult bodies. They can't understand truth. They can't respond properly to authority. They refuse to hear truth because it makes them feel unsafe. But if their mom and dad would have made them feel unsafe when they were 1, 2, 3, and 4, they feel a whole lot more safe right now. Can I get a witness, right? Okay, so you say, Myron, what's your point? My point is, because of all of these people who are out of control and they just want to do whatever they feel like doing, now there's an attack on free speech. What does that attack on free speech look like? Well, here's one of the things it looks like. There have been more reparations given to a group of people who proclaims discrimination than there were given to actual people who they and their ancestors were actually discriminated on. Now, who am I talking about? I'm talking about homosexuals. Now, here's what I'm going to say when I talk about homosexuality. I don't refer to homosexuality as gay. I just refuse to use that language because when I was growing up, the word gay meant the same as the word joy. It meant happy. So when people can disagree with me. I'm not saying this hatefully. There are people in my family who have decided to become homosexuals. And I didn't say they were born that way. They are decided to become homosexuals. I still love them. I don't think you should hate people who are homosexuals. I don't think you should hate them but for the grace of God, there you go, there I go, right? You don't know what that person's been through, but I still believe that a human being should have the right to believe that something is wrong. I believe that in the United States of America, according to the First Amendment, an adult should have the ability to believe something that's wrong is right. I believe a person, if they want to be a racist, I believe they should have a right to be a racist, even though I believe being a racist is wrong. They have a right to be a racist. Why? For the same reason somebody should have a right to be able to walk around outside, looking up at the ceiling, looking up at the stars and say, the sky is green and the grass is blue, the sky is green and the grass is blue. Like, how much time are you going to spend arguing with that person? Exactly zero. Why? Because as Mark Twain said, you never argue with an idiot because if you do, they will bring you down to their level and beat you with experience. Are y'all tracking? See, here's the problem. Here's the problem that I have with the homosexual movement. First of all, they use the word discrimination. My ancestors were discriminated against. My parents were discriminated against. I was discriminated against. I had to be born in a hospital that had less resources. And as a result of that, I've walked with a brace on my leg my whole life. That's real discrimination. I can remember black and white fountains. That's real discrimination. I remember the back of the bus. I can remember my mom pulling up beside a police officer, and we'd look over, Mama, don't look at those cops. Because she grew up in an era where a police officer or a white person could kill you if they thought you looked at them funny. You say, what are you saying, Myron? I'm just saying there have been more reparations given to homosexuals for proclaiming discrimination than there have ever been given to black people for actually being discriminated against. And I really believe that in full honesty and full disclosure, every black person who ever hears the term discrimination applied to homosexuality should be offended. And I know some people disagree with me, but what rights didn't they have? My grandparents they weren't even allowed to learn how to read. Like what's wrong? Why can't we think? Why can't we think? Here's the problem. Now we live in a world where the government wants to allow boys to go into the girls' bathroom. It's insane. Like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that doesn't make any sense. And now they're creating terms to which they give no definition, so all they have to do is say you broke that law. You say, what are you talking about? Transgender. Transgender, according to the law, it's against the law to discriminate against transgender, but there's no definition in the law of what transgender even is. How does a group of people get all these special rights, which they're calling equal rights? They're not equal rights, they're special rights. When people whose lives have been hard, difficult, unnecessarily difficult for decades, get no reparations and no acknowledgement at all. It's like we've got to use our brains, people. We can't go along with something just because it sounds good. Could nobody really see that when they started creating all these special rights, that they were coming after our children? Well, why are they coming after our children? They want to start teaching, sex education class to kindergartners and elementary school. They want to start teaching about transgender and homosexuality. Are you out of your, that's a level of insanity that I can't process. You say, Myron, you shouldn't talk like that. Okay, don't you talk like that. But for the time being, before free speech is dead, and I hope I don't get canceled, because if I do get canceled, I'm okay with it. But I hope I don't get canceled. But here's the reality. All I'm doing is saying what other people are thinking and are afraid to say. Right? They're afraid to say it because they're afraid of what their neighbor might think. They're afraid of what their cousin might think. They're afraid of what their brother might think. They're afraid of what their children, they're afraid of what the media might think. But the reality is, truth is truth. You know, I saw a very famous pastor, and I'm going to wind up kind of with this. Saw a very famous pastor on the Larry King live show, and Larry King said, let me ask you a question. He said, here's what he said. He said, are you telling me that you believe that homosexuality is wrong? And he didn't use homosexuality. That's the word I use because that's what it is, okay? So I'm not going to call it all that other stuff. I'm not going to give it a bunch of initials because then I might get them wrong. And then they're adding more initials to it all the time. So I'm just going to call it homosexuality. I'm going to call it what it is. He said, do you believe it's actually wrong? I don't just believe homosexuality is wrong. I believe homosexuality is wrong. I believe fornication is wrong. I believe shacking up is wrong. I believe that adultery is wrong. I believe all of it's wrong. Okay, so now you know who you're dealing with. Okay, cool. So, I've never seen this pastor look uncomfortable before. He was so uncomfortable answering that question. But Larry King's no longer here. But if he were to ask me that question, I'm going to tell you what I would have said. I would have said, Larry, I'm going to answer your question, but before I do, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the only way anyone could have eternal life? Larry King to that would have said what? He would have said, no, I don't believe that. Then I would have said, Larry, let me ask you this question. If I don't need you to believe what I believe in order for me to believe it, why do you need me to believe or be quiet about what I believe in order for you to hold on to your beliefs? Because that's the real question. And the real reason we being anybody with any view whatsoever, people who oppose us to be quiet, is because we're afraid we might actually be wrong. Either that, or we already know we are. But we just want to be left alone as we're wrong. Okay, go be alone. I'll leave you alone. I believe you have a right to be wrong. I don't believe you have a right to teach my children something that I don't believe, while I don't have the right to teach them what I do believe. That is a level of insanity that will destroy anything. I don't care how great you might think your country is. And so what we better start doing, we better start letting our voices be heard and stop only having these conversations on back channels. I'm not talking about hateful conversations. By the way, let me say this about this. I'm going to talk about the word hate. I've probably already been going longer than I should. I'm going to talk about this phrase, hate crimes. That is such a stupid phrase. Like, what knucklehead came up with the phrase hate crimes? So is a hate crime different than a love crime? All crimes are hate crimes. You don't steal somebody's car because you love them. You don't rob a bank because you love the people at the bank. You don't embezzle. You don't embezzle money from a company because you love the owners of the company. All crimes are hate crimes, you knucklehead. Only a politician could come up with something that dumb. Hate crimes. Really. That's the best you got. Hate crimes. All crimes are hate crimes. Anytime somebody commits a crime against another individual, they did not do it because they love them. Let's stop allowing deceptive people to twist our minds around ideas that we've known our entire lives are wrong. And by the way, here's what I do. Like, I am happy. I'm not going to argue with anybody about anything, but I'm happy to have an open dialogue with anybody who disagrees with me. Like, I'm happy to have that conversation, as long as you understand if you ask me a question, you ain't going to get somebody else's answer. And I will let you speak your voice, and then I will speak mine. If you give me room to talk, I'll give you room to talk. I believe, watch this now, I believe a person has a right to be a homosexual. But I still believe homosexuality is wrong. I believe a person has a right to smoke cigarettes, but I still believe smoking cigarettes. I believe a person has a right to commit adultery, but I believe adultery is wrong. Why? How comes we can take one section of immorality? Well, it's not immorality. Okay, whatever. Because they say we can't legislate morality, right? Remember they used to say that? So what now they're doing is they're legislating immorality, but they couldn't legislate morality. Anyway, that's a different conversation for a different day. All I'm saying is, like, I believe that a person has a right to be a racist, even though I believe being a racist is wrong. And if you don't have that kind of freedom, what you're going to end up with, another situation like antebellum slavery, another situation like Jim Crow law, another situation like Nazism and what Hitler did to the Jews. You're going to end up with more situations like that, because the first thing they do is they take away your ability to believe something, and then they take away your ability to proclaim something. Free speech is dead if we let our country keep going in this direction. And I will stand for a person's right to be wrong, but I will also stand for my right to be right. And I will stand for my right to be right even in the face of wrong. And I'll stand for my right, your right, my right, anybody else's right to be wrong. Like, let's let every top sit on its own bottom. Let's let people sow the seeds into the garden of their future, and as long as they know they're willing to reap the harvest. But don't you dare, not the government, not the media, not social media, not a mob of angry people who know their perspective is wrong. Don't you dare try to make me allow somebody else with some other views to sow the seeds, their seeds, in my garden, because it ain't happening. So, I'm going to read this again. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. By the way, the separation of church and state was not to remove religious influences from the state, but to remove state influences from religion. Anybody who understands English, the English language, knows that's what that says, okay? Or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Do you know what? I welcome people to have conversations with me when they disagree, because I know there's a 50-50 chance they could be wrong and 50-50 chance I could be wrong. If they're wrong, I want to stand my ground, but if I'm wrong, I want to know so I can change. Shouldn't that be all of our perspective? Why do I want to hold on to a ground if it's not good, just because it's mine? Okay? Well, that we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men. And what they do is they change the meaning of words. They took the word that meant happy and they turned it into a word that meant homosexual, and now people are growing up thinking the subconscious message behind that is, well, unless you're a homosexual, you can't be happy. That's the subconscious. That's why I refuse to use the word gay. I'm not going to use that word. You can use it if you want to, but I'm not going to use it, right? Sleight of men, cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. They're just waiting for an opportunity to deceive someone. But speaking the truth in love, by the way, speaking the truth in love, my daughter, I love her. She says, the scripture says we speak the truth in love. Make sure that the truth doesn't travel faster than love. If you're going to speak out against something or someone, don't do it from a place of anger. Do it from a place of love, that you have their best interest in mind. The truth should never travel without love. I mean, the truth should not travel faster than love. And then I added my caveat, because you know I've got to add my caveat, right? Love should never travel without the truth. Because now you've got something that's really dangerous. If you have love and no truth, it's dangerous. If you have truth and no love, it's dangerous. Speaking the truth in love, but speaking the truth in love may grow up into him that is all things, which is the head, even Christ. So hopefully this will help you understand some of the things that are going on in the world. And I'm going to recommend a book. It's one of my favorite books of last year or the year before. It's called Anti-Fragile. I don't know if any of you have read it or not. But the premise of the book is this. The opposite of fragile is not fragile. The opposite of fragile is anti-fragile. Right? Fragile is something that breaks easily. Not fragile is something that doesn't break easily. Anti-fragile, the same thing that breaks one thing makes the other thing stronger. I'm going to give you an illustration that I'm done. The same wind that extinguishes a candle feeds a forest fire. So what's the lesson in that? The lesson is, don't be the candle, be the forest fire. Let's go be anti-fragile, speak the truth in love, and stand our ground when our ground needs to be stood. If you like this video, like it, comment on it, share it. Be kind. Like, if you disagree with me and you put a comment in there, as long as you're not name calling and just trying to promote your ideas that are different. Like, this platform is for the people who want to learn this stuff. And if you can disagree with me and I'll leave your comment alone if you have a reason. But if you just go on an emotional rant, it's probably going to get deleted. Okay, so just know, right? And the reason I do that is for the same reason I'm not going to let some stranger come into my living room floor and throw up all over my carpet. I built that house for me and my wife to enjoy. I built this platform for me and the people who believe the things I believe to enjoy. And so if you want to come in here, be kind, be nice, be respectful, and you can disagree with me till the cows come home. And I welcome it. So, all right, y'all. I'll look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. Peace out, Cub Scouts.